and welcome back to another amazing episode of Sports Talk with Dad. We have a lot to talk about today, but before we get into all of that, my name is Kyle, and as always, I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man who doesn't understand how sides of the table work, my dad, Tim.
I do understand, but I thought we shared.
I have my side for my stuff. I always got Brutus. I always got two other things. And you got your three on that side. And today, you decided to mess with my side of the table. And I had to fix it.
Happily so. Why on God's little green earth are you wearing a Hawaiian shirt?
Well, I figured since we are having the amazing tropical weather of -6 degrees, I should celebrate.
You mean like this? I come over here, grab a Diet Coke, as I always do.
Yeah.
Damn thing's frozen.
Yeah.
It's just sitting on the ground.
Yep. It's really cold outside today, folks, up in Wisconsin. It is freezing, well below freezing. We are negative weather. Let's just leave it at that. You judge right now how cold it is by how long you can stand outside and not die. That's the kind of temperature we're in.
Yeah. If you spit outside, it would freeze before it hits the ground.
Probably at this point. It's getting there. It's not as cold as it was a couple years ago, but it's nice to actually see snow in January for the first time all year.
All I know is I let out your dog.
Yeah. Not a fan.
He went out. He came right back in.
Yeah, I'm surprised his pee's not freezing at this point. It is cold, cold, cold. But hey, I want to get right into it today.
All right.
Because a lot has happened, a lot of good games. They killed the curse of Burrow head in Kansas City. A terrible, terrible game that it turned out to be in Philadelphia. First things first, though, McCarthy's not going anywhere from Dallas.
No.
He's officially there and has parted ways with Kellen Moore.
Yeah, I always wonder about coaches that leave for a lateral position because the money's not going to be that much greater, I don't think.
I don't think at all. I think a big thing was I don't think McCarthy wanted him to begin with. That was really a Jerry Jones saying he's your offensive coordinator and he's the one that's going to be calling the plays if you're going to take this job. The question is, though, Mike McCarthy, is he going to go back to calling plays?
Oh, God, I don't have the strength. I mean, the problem
he was a great play caller.
For a while.
He got stagnant.
He got very stagnant, and Ezekiel Elliott is not going to have much ball time if McCarthy's calling the plays unless he's going out for passes.
Right.
So I hope he continues the way it is. It seemed to work pretty well with him being the head coach and having an offensive coordinator, and they've talked and they worked out the game plan.
They got really far. Like I said last week, it was just nice to see McCarthy look like a head coach again. He had the look in his eye. He looked like he was really engaged, and his quarterback let him down. Here's the big question. Now, I said at the beginning of this football season that Dak Prescott next year was going to be in Seattle. I still think that's a reality of the situation. They're not going to run with Geno Smith in Seattle. If they do another year, they will draft a quarterback this year. They have the number 3 overall pick this year.
Like that.
I have to look it up. They're going to get a quarterback. It's either going to be the kid from Kentucky. It's either going to be the CJ Stroud. I keep mixing up JT Barrett and CJ Stroud. 2-letter name quarterbacks get mixed up in my brain. CJ Stroud or Bryce Young if he's still there, because the Lions aren't getting a quarterback. I know that for sure.
I think the Lions trade back, to be honest with you, and get some more picks.
I think that's a smart play. But they're not going to run with Geno for long, and I think Dak Prescott fits the Seattle offense extremely well.
And I think Dak is the reason the Cowboys haven't taken the next step.
Right.
So I could definitely see that happening. Then if you're Dallas, you've got to come up with a quarterback. There's 2 that come to mind.
I know one.
I know one too. I think we go with the same 2. Rodgers and Brady.
Brady won't go to Dallas. You and I disagree on that one. Brady's not going to Dallas at all. If Brady's going to play again, I don't think he stays in Tampa.
I think he goes to Vegas.
I think Vegas or Miami are the 2 places.
I think Rodgers, look, let me put this on the record. I do not think Rodgers is leaving Green Bay at all for a lot of
No,
reasons.
he's not.
However, if he was going to go, Miami's the best fit for either of those two quarterbacks.
Or San Francisco. Here's the other thing, and well, you know what? Let me save San Francisco because I do want to go in depth on the San Francisco situation they have there. But Dak, I can't imagine, except for the money side of things, being your quarterback next year in Dallas. If you really want to move forward, if you really want to take those next steps, Dallas proved to you in a divisional round that he's going to continue to make those mistakes. He had one game in the wild card round where, hey, he finally looked like he was the quarterback that was going to take him to the promised land. And then the division round, he turns into Tony Romo in the playoffs.
You took the words right out of my mouth. They've got the next step up from Tony Romo. It's still not enough to get you past the San Franciscos and the Philadelphias of the world.
Is it the next step up? I mean, Tony Romo started to get better towards the end of his career. The problem was he was always hurt. He had such a bad back at that point, he couldn't play anymore.
Correct. And I think Dak offers or did at least for a while, offer a little bit more mobility than Romo had.
He did. And Dak's a decent quarterback.
He is.
But he's still coming off of injuries. He just doesn't have a good pocket presence. From everything I've ever seen with Dak and talking with other Cowboys fans, they're not a fan of him. I mean, hell, I know a ton of Cowboy fans that wanted them to roll with Andy Dalton when he was there, which boggles the mind. I don't know why you'd ever want to roll with Andy Dalton at this point.
I think whenever I see Dak in the pocket, he's got happy feet. He's just always looking to make, where you look at the Hurts and the Bradys and the Rodgers, if they're getting pressure, they'll take 2 steps. Josh Allen's good at that. Joe Burrow is extremely good at that. Good feet doesn't mean you can run. Good feet means you know when to take a step to the left, a step to the right to evade the pressure and make your pass.
Even you look at a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, he's going to make a decision real quick. Either he's going to go or he's going to throw the ball. I mean, that's why Lamar Jackson, I think, is as good of a quarterback as he is because he can make those decisions like that. I mean, if he's going to run, he's going to run. Dak just seems to second guess himself while he's sitting in the pocket, and that's where he gets into trouble.
And I think Jerry is one of the most loyal owners on the planet. He sticks
when it comes to
for a long time.
Yeah.
Especially with
quarterbacks and coaches.
I think at this point you have to make a move, whether you make a trade with the Lions, for example, and it's not going to be the Lions because the Lions aren't going to want Dak Prescott. But if you make a trade with somebody to move up and get one of those top line quarterbacks, McCarthy is a quarterback guru. He helped make Rodgers what he is.
Here's another quarterback out there. Baker Mayfield's going to be a free agent this year. Now, I think if he's smart, he stays with the Rams. They're going to stick with Stafford. He gets to sit there. But Baker Mayfield, Jerry Jones wanted him the year he got drafted 1 overall. There was no doubt that he wanted Baker Mayfield. That is Jerry Jones kind of player.
But it's not Mike McCarthy's type of player.
Isn't it? Mike McCarthy had Brett Favre, man.
Yeah, a different cat. At that point in Favre's career, he was a Hall of Fame player running out the string. Baker Mayfield, if he shuts up and just goes and does what McCarthy says, fine. He'll be outstanding. I don't know if he can do that.
Baker Mayfield's a weird quarterback because Baker Mayfield failed in 2 places, had one good game with a third team, and now everybody's saying he's the next Hall of Fame quarterback again. I've never seen that type of stigma around a quarterback before. Like, this is the same guy that's going to choke as time goes on. This is the same guy that told 2 all-pro wide receivers to be patient when he wasn't throwing them touchdowns when he was a rookie. Like, this is a kid with an attitude problem. This is a kid who is very erratic and who can look like a Hall of Fame player. He can look as good as Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Joe Burrow at times. But the 13 out of the 18 games now, 17 games now, he's going to look like a bad quarterback.
Okay, but you know as well as I do, losing is a great teacher. And he's lost a lot, and his ego has taken some real shots.
Because they lost because of him.
Yes. Has he gotten to the point where he's done a little self-reflection, and he looked good with the Rams, and he played
one game.
One game, correct.
One game where he was playing backyard ball. The next game, he did not look the same.
So Can he play in a system like McCarthy's? I don't think so. It wouldn't be my pick.
The question is, you have to trust your quarterback to get the balls to your playmakers. And so far, everywhere he's been, he didn't get the ball to OBJ. He didn't get the ball to Jarvis Landry in Cleveland. He didn't get the ball to Moore in Carolina, who was your big-time player. And I know this because Moore was on my fantasy team, and it made me sad every single week that he wasn't throwing him the ball. And we haven't seen enough with the Rams yet to see if he's going to do that. But for some reason, he has to be the biggest meathead in the room, for lack of better. I mean, I have better terms, but I'm not going to say him here. He has to show that he's the biggest guy in the room, and God forbid he gets it to his top receivers. Listen, wide receivers are supposed to be loud. They're supposed to.
They're the divas of the
They're
team.
supposed to be divas.
Right.
I want my Randy Moss. I want Terrell Owens. I want Chad Ochocinco Johnson, whatever he's going by now. I want those diva wide receivers who are calling for the ball every time, because you know what those receivers are going to do when the ball's thrown in their way?
Catch.
They're going to catch the damn ball. And they're going to make plays happen because their ego won't allow them to do anything else. Same with OBJ. He's going to catch the ball and make those plays. You get the ball in their hands. It is your job as the quarterback to handle those attitudes when it comes to the huddle in the locker room, not to be that diva.
Quarterbacks that are divas never tend to work unless you're a Joe Willie Namath who was setting the bar. He was the first guy to ever do it. He was loud, he was proud, and he did it.
You better show up and play if you're going to be a diva as a quarterback.
Correct. And I do not think.
I mean, Kenny Stabler, not a diva, but very much set the tone in the locker room as the guy that was going to go out and drink and study playbooks in a bar.
The 1970s, I don't know that we can rate today's players based on the 70s. It was a different ball game back then. Those were
North Dallas 40, man.
It was North Dallas 40. He was the quarterback. He had his wide receivers, and what a great movie.
It surprises me how many people have not only not seen that movie, but not heard of that movie.
Oh my God.
Like it's top 15 sports movie of all time.
It's in my top 10. Mac Davis as the quarterback, Nick Nolte as Poot, his wide receiver, who just catches the ball and wants to be left alone.
Well, it shows a player at the end of his career. It shows the pain he's going through. I mean, it just really shows what the NFL was at that time, especially with the Cowboys.
I was going to say, it showed what playing for Tom Landry was like.
Exactly.
Not a lot of fun if you're outside the blinds a little bit.
It's not. It's not at all.
It's not like when you could be the Packers wide receiver, go out all night with Paul Hornung, show up for the Super Bowl, Max McGee, thank you. Can't go out, drink all night, come in at 6 a.m. and then go catch 2 touchdowns. And quite honestly, he was the MVP of.
He was the MVP. He should have been the MVP of that game.
But that's it. That's not the way it is today. These guys have to come in shape. They have to be studying the playbook because the offenses are so. Look what happened to Kyler Murray. Didn't spend the time doing the study.
That we know of.
But the play certainly didn't reflect it on the field this year.
Speaking of diva quarterbacks.
We're going to talk about Rodgers now?
No, I'm talking Kyler Murray. Speaking of diva quarterbacks, I mean, Kyler Murray is one of the biggest divas at least I've ever seen in a quarterback uniform. Number one, Mighty Mouse is not tall enough to be a diva. Number two, when your wide receiver is sounding more like a quarterback than your quarterback, you got a problem. And that's why Cliff Kingsbury got fired. You made us give up on Josh Rosen, which I don't even think he's in the league anymore, so it is what it is, but he never got a shot. I feel bad for that kid. But you have Kyler Murray. You decide to go with number 1 overall pick, Kyler Murray, and the dude's a head case.
Complete head case. Nobody wants that head coaching job. That would be the worst in the league right now.
And not unless Kyler Murray's not there. I mean, Kyler Murray, I said how many years ago that he's going to end up playing baseball after his 5th year in the NFL. And I still think that's going to happen.
It's sad but true. And I'm surprised at, honestly, how long it's taking for some of these head coaching jobs to fill. Harbaugh is now talking to the Broncos again. Nobody seems to want these jobs.
I don't think it's that people don't want the jobs. I think it's that ownership and general managers are now getting smarter with their picks. I mean, how many look at the early 2000s. How many one-year coaches did you see come and go, or 2 years or 3 years, and they were gone? Look at the Steelers. Steelers have had what?
One coach.
But in their history, they've had what, like
Well, don't
7 coaches?
something like that. It's under 10 because they stick with their coaches. I mean, you had Chuck Noll.
They take their time and they make their right decisions.
Correct.
They absolutely take their time. They trust the process and they make the right decisions. Look what the Raiders did for so long. They had a new coach, I think, every single year from 2002 to 2011.
Well, that was because you had a wackadoodle owner.
You did, but still, I mean, it was that case for a long time. Now that Gruden's gone, they're starting to go through that again. But I think it makes more sense. Take the time, especially make sure the GM and the coach are on the same page on how to build the team, and let them build a team.
Unlike Green Bay.
Green Bay doesn't know how to build a team. I know you want to get there.
No,
I'm trying, folks, to not let him get to the Packers.
Let's talk about the 49ers before we get there.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about that game as a whole. Number one, Jalen Hurts, congratulations for being just unbelievable in that game.
They were going to win that game, I think, no matter what happened.
Jalen Hurts is ready to go. I mean, looked unbelievable. He's going to be a good quarterback in this league for a very, very long time. I take back everything I said at the beginning of the season. He proved himself. And he's going to be here for a while. What do the 49ers do?
Brock Purdy's out apparently for 6 months.
Minimum. He has a torn ulnar tendon. Not Tommy John, folks. Not that it's out of place. This thing ripped.
And just I don't know if you remember, that's a dangerous place to have surgery because they had to move.
Big artery there.
They had to move my ulnar tendon and scrape the bone down, and they nicked the artery. I almost lost my arm from that very injury.
It's any surgery is dangerous, but especially there's a big artery that's there. He is getting a second opinion to see if he needs the surgery. But dude's earned my respect. He came out and actually threw a couple balls.
And he had to be in excruciating pain to do that. He couldn't throw it far.
He refused to take off his uniform.
Right.
Most guys in that league even are sitting on the sideline in a sweatshirt.
Well, here's my question, though. Were the 49ers smart? Because McCaffrey could throw a ball farther than Purdy could even possibly do it physically. Should they have just went with him and just ran the Wildcat, tried to make some stuff up with him?
You're taking away your most dangerous weapon. And that's why they decided not to. McCaffrey is the reason you guys had won so many games. It was the best trade made in a long time. You had to make that decision. It's unfortunate. I think it would have been a closer game. I agree with you. The refs were clearly on the Eagles' side in that game.
I'm not blaming the refs for anything.
The Jumbotron not showing that one angle where he didn't make the challenge.
Well,
that's home field advantage.
Home field advantage.
I mean, good for them for that one.
The NFL absolutely needs to put back the rule where you can have an emergency quarterback suited.
Well, explain that rule because I didn't know this was a thing until you brought it up.
Yeah, it was back in the early 2000s. I think back for a while that teams were allowed to have an emergency quarterback suited up. Didn't cost a roster spot. He was just there in case.
Right.
It happened to a team in 2011. I can't remember which team it was, but they weren't able to take advantage of it then. I think that it's an absolute rule that needs to come back because even if you have an emergency quarterback, say it was Kirk Benkirk, that was just there in case of an emergency, he would have been an infinitely better option than going with Purdy
at that
point in the game. Put him in there, and at least somebody can throw. At least you're going to have a better product on TV because it was not.
It turned into a real boring game.
Well, once Johnson got the concussion.
Before that, Johnson, I mean, I saw him putting his mouthpiece in his helmet, and I mean, he was shaking. He did not want to be in that game. He's a guy I'm surprised he hasn't announced his retirement already. He was clearly, it reminded me of watching Doug Peterson going into Packer games towards the end of his career when Brett Favre would go out. It was that one of those, like, I don't want to be here.
More like Seneca
Wallace is a perfect example. He retired the next day. Yeah. He's like, I didn't come here to play. I came here to collect a paycheck.
I was going to hold a clipboard. And you put me in and expect me to do something? What are you thinking? But yes, it's exactly that situation. I felt bad for him because he was so nervous. He wasn't planning.
That was a big game, and he was not ready for that big of a game.
No, and I felt bad for the 49ers because even going with Brock Purdy, he had won 7 in a row. He had played very well. Looked like he may be the real deal. And now, what do? You've got Garoppolo, who always gets hurt. You've got Purdy. You've got Trey Lance.
Right.
Lance is
Garoppolo, by the way, 3 days away from coming back?
Right. He would have been back for the Super Bowl, and that would have been an interesting conversation.
It would have. I mean, you would have had to have gone with Garoppolo, who would have won that game and been a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is what I was cheering for. But unfortunately, Purdy got hurt a little bit earlier. It's true. You can give me that look all you want. It's 100% true. It has to be true. Otherwise, the world makes no sense anymore. I mean, it doesn't anyways. But
Garoppolo would not have been a first ballot.
If he wins that Super Bowl, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Sure.
10-2, 1-1. He's more of a starter than
Don't say it.
Warner ever was.
I love Kurt. Kurt Warner's a good guy, and I'm falling.
Sure.
It's a great story.
Yep.
Stop.
Garoppolo would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer had he come back and won that Super Bowl, because how is he not? Because that's your bar.
Stop.
But you have a decision to make. Garoppolo's not the answer at quarterback in
No.
San Francisco. That's clearly not going to happen. Trey Lance isn't your answer at quarterback in San Francisco.
He's played his last down there.
He's done. He's done. I've heard trades where Trey Lance to Green Bay, Rodgers to San Francisco. If you do that, Green Bay, I throw away my Packers stuff. Like, I'm done at that point.
They do that. Goody better be going with them.
I agree. That better be part of the trade. I think Purdy's your answer there, but you have a question now, though, because his career could be done.
This is an injury I've never seen before, actually.
I don't remember ever seeing it.
With a tendon that's actually torn, shriveled up, gone.
Right.
They're going to have to reattach it.
They'll probably take a cadaver at this point, I'm assuming.
I don't know if you can do that with a tendon. I don't know.
They did it with, what's the quarterback? Played for the Bengals all those years, and then the Raiders.
Anderson?
No, and then the Raiders, and then he played for the Cardinals for a little
Homer?
bit. No, you're failing me. It's okay. Carson Palmer.
Oh, Carson Palmer. Okay.
Carson Palmer, they did it with his knee. I don't know if they can do it with the elbow. But I remember playing tennis and having the UCL get inflamed and not being able to serve anymore.
Mine was so bad, my shoulder was actually dragging. And when I try to play ball and I tried to throw it, and I couldn't. The pain was so intense.
Right.
The last 2 fingers of your hand are controlled by that.
Yep.
And I lost it. And I still don't have it back completely, but
That's how you grip the football, man.
It's going to be tough to come back from, because that tendon is everything in your hand.
It is. It is. And for those of you watching that don't know, it really is. That's your whole movement. It runs all the way down. It connects to everything you have in your arm. Speaking from somebody who's had one before, you've obviously had it worse than me. I had it get severely inflamed from playing tennis, and my arm was in a sling for a month.
Well, if you really want to do something, for those of you who put your hand on your elbow and start moving it, and if you feel something flip over the bone, that's your ulnar tendon.
Right.
Hold on to it and pinch it, and then try to do anything with your arm.
You can't.
You
You can't. And the fact that his is gone, again, as a quarterback, if this was somebody else, they'd be fine. If this was an offensive lineman, if this was a linebacker, if this was a corner, if this was even a wide receiver, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But with it being a quarterback on your throwing hand, again, more respect for Brock Purdy than ever before for still being around. Like, that's
for going
most of us. I guarantee anybody watching this show is done. I'm done.
That had to hurt.
I'm going home.
That had to hurt like hell.
I'm sure it did. I mean, no matter, I don't care how much Toradol you give me. Like,
Toradol's not going to help that.
I'm out. And he went back into the game. I mean, I guarantee he earned a lot of respect. But Josh Johnson was not the answer. Kittle was pissed. I mean, you could see it. He was wide open on a couple of plays, and he was pissed. Josh Johnson just is not the answer.
No.
So my question is not my question. I guess the statement. That's where I could really see Tom Brady ending up. You give Purdy another year to kind of sit, especially behind Tom Brady. Really make sure his arm's okay. Tom Brady gets to go back home to California. And honestly, if Tom Brady's on that team with all the weapons around him, I don't see how he doesn't take him to another Super Bowl. I mean, that's already built.
Tom Brady on that team in that game, they may have won that game.
They would have won that.
Even as good as Jalen Hurts is, they may have won that game. Brady's going to be interesting to see. He said something that made a lot of sense. My question is, his kids are on the East Coast.
Right.
He's on the West Coast. He's very much a family guy. He made his choice, and he wants to play football. Because why not? I mean, at this point in his career, he had to fight his way through Michigan. He was undrafted, 6th-round draft pick, all this stuff. Everybody was questioning him all that time. Now, when he's finally the guy, now they're telling him, well, you should retire. And he's like, no, I want to play.
Well, he's slowing down. I mean, he's 45
sure.
years old, for Christ's sake.
He wants to.
He's the oldest starting quarterback to ever play in the NFL.
Yes. Well, I think he wants to break Blanda's record.
He's not playing to 48 years old. As a starter, I mean, he could play till he's 50 as a backup.
He'll never be a backup.
Right, which is why he walks away. But if he gets one more shot with the team that he grew up cheering for, with the San Francisco 49ers, I mean, why wouldn't he go?
I'm sure that San Francisco's already reached out to him. He's a free agent. He's not going back to Tampa.
He's not, No, that team was ready built. This is another team ready built. And I think it's a perfect segue into the Brock Purdy era. Brock Purdy's not going to be ready for training camp. If he is, then he is a genetic freak with the healing powers of some Marvel or DC superhero.
Adrian Peterson. Maybe even more.
More so. I mean, this is well, no, because that was his leg, and he's a running back. This is an arm, and he'd be as much of a genetic freak as Adrian Peterson is, and I don't think anybody's as genetic of a freak as Adrian Peterson was.
And I don't think they want to take the risk and ruin him like they did with RG3. He needs the time. I think he's your
sad story.
I still think Purdy's your future. He's a good quarterback.
He's a good quarterback. And if you can give that good quarterback a chance to heal and sit behind Tom Brady and learn,
miles ahead.
That's where you go. And I do think that that's the spot of all spots that at this point makes sense for Tom Brady. Because again, I don't think Purdy's ready for training camp. I don't think he's ready for week 3. If he's going to need that surgery, that's a big road. He has to learn how to throw again.
Correct. It's not like a bone that'll just mend.
Right.
It's going to have to be rehabbed to death.
Right. Well, it's not like a leg where you have 2 tendons there. So if one snaps, it's easier to come back and all that muscle. This is around your elbow. You don't have a lot here.
How the hell did he even grip a ball?
I don't know. Like this.
Had to.
I mean, it was like gripping a fastball at that point. I mean, he wasn't throwing far. The fact that he could even make this motion with his arm boggles my mind after hearing how bad that injury was.
I'm surprised he wasn't throwing it just like this, underhanded.
Even that would hurt. I mean, again, Brock Purdy, you're a god. So well done.
Okay, so speaking of quarterbacks who played with pain, Mahomes stepped up. High ankle sprain is a bitch. And yet he played, he could tell he was hurting.
Again, an injury I know well. Not that I was an athlete, it's just I was clumsy and got hurt a lot.
He's right. Anyways.
Adventurous, as I called it.
You were a better athlete than you're giving yourself credit for. But, you've got Mahomes played well. Cincinnati was in the game the whole way. Stupid penalty at the end. I still put the blame on that game and the loss on the Cincinnati offensive line.
Yeah. What did I say at the beginning of this year? I said I didn't think the Bengals were going to make the playoffs because of their offensive line. They did nothing to upgrade their offensive line. And once again, in the biggest game of the season, just like in the Super Bowl last year, you need to rely on that offensive line. Kansas City saw that they need to upgrade their defensive line, and they did.
And they just pinned their ears back and let him go.
Went.
Yeah.
You're going to get Joe Burrow killed. You have football Jesus on your team.
Forgive him, Lord.
He already did. We already had a conversation.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, good.
He told me, he said, this is my only football son. I gave him to the world. So it's already there. We're good.
waiting for the lightning to just come down through the
One day.
boom.
One day it'll be there. So hopefully who's ever out there has a sense of humor. But you have touchdown Jesus on your team. Football Jesus on your... I can't say touchdown Jesus.
Right,
That's Notre Dame. So it's football Jesus on your team. That's more blasphemous than me, by the way, having a giant picture of Jesus on the wall and calling it touchdown Jesus because it goes over your football stadium. So if the Catholic priests at Notre Dame get away with it, I don't want to hear about me calling Burrow football Jesus.
Don't they also have first down Moses or something there?
Exactly. So I don't want to hear anything. If Catholic priests are doing it, I can do it.
They're Catholic.
Back to this. You have football Jesus there. You're getting me going. I'm trying to make a point. We could go off on
every day, and they've got
listen
and the cross and the thing.
And they'll probably come after me for saying it because I can't even speak.
Hypocrisy
knows no bounds.
God,
he's got me so riled up. This is ridiculous. This is you found the button.
I did. I love it. Normally it's me.
I know. I don't like this reversal here. But you have football Jesus who can walk on water for you, has proven it time and time again, and you're not giving him any type of protection. Even Moses was given a wall of protection when crossing the river or the sea, the Red Sea. I'm trying to do this and I'm failing miserably.
Miserably. I know you've read your Bible, but
boy, it's been a while, man.
PD is going to be all over you.
Yeah, I'm sure. But he's not giving anything.
No,
you're not protecting him at all. You're going to get him hurt. This is a guy who already said he's had concussions.
And that's the problem. He's going to take one hit too many. I don't know why they didn't address it in the offseason.
I don't either.
Free agents were available. You've got to – this is your future.
Well, and I tell you what, you have Burrow still on a rookie contract right now. You're probably going to extend him at the end of this year. But it'll be at least at the front part will be team friendly. It'll be a Mahomes type of deal.
Sure.
You have your Jamar Chase, who's also still on a rookie deal. You'll have to re-sign T. Higgins at this point. But you have money.
Correct.
You need to take care of that offensive line while you can and then draft for it. Cincinnati should not make a pick that's not an offensive lineman in this upcoming draft.
And I would go out and see if they could get a David Bakhtiari. Packers are going to have to do something with that salary.
Bring whoever you pay for it at this point.
Just do it.
You have Joe Mixon that's still going to be there. You have Chase. You have Burrow. You have Higgins, who hopefully will still be there if you're a Cincinnati fan. You have the pieces in place, and you have a defense that's solid. So you need to protect your quarterback because once again, I mean, they should be in the Super Bowl this year, and they should have won the Super Bowl last year. But your offensive line didn't get the job done. Aaron Donald ran all over the field against the Bengals in the Super Bowl, and this year you had the Chiefs' defensive line run all over the field against that offensive line. It's a problem, and you need to fix it.
It's a problem that's so obvious, I can't believe they overlook it. You've got to look on paper and go, these guys just aren't cutting it.
Right. It was glaring last year. I've never seen a team that has such a glaring hole and then doesn't do anything about it and just runs with the same unit.
And can I just say, for the record, we need to be talking about Andy Reid as in that greatest coach of all time conversation.
Oh, definitely. At this point.
More than even Belichick. I mean, Lombardi and then the battles for number 2. But Andy Reid has done it wherever he's been, and he is an outstanding coach. If I were a team and I could get him, bring him in.
He's not leaving Mahomes.
No.
The same way he wasn't leaving McNabb. He knows what he has. I mean, 5 NFC championships in a row and a Super Bowl appearance. No, NFC with the Eagles.
And with the Eagles.
And now he's been to I don't know how many with the Chiefs. And making the call and realizing what you have in Mahomes. I've heard the story from Mahomes at this point where he was saying he really wanted to go to the Chiefs. And he called up the Chiefs saying, hey, just so you know, if I drop to this point, I'm probably not going to be there anymore. And helped to convince the Chiefs straight up to get him. What an amazing move. And to let him sit for a year because you know you have Alex Smith there ready to go. And not move on from Alex Smith during that time. Yeah, he should be known as one of the greatest. He's a Hall of Fame coach for sure.
Yeah, and Mahomes may be the most crazy, talented player I've ever seen.
He's really good.
He's so smart. He's so determined. He played with an ankle that would have kept most players out. And yet he stepped up. He played. The fight he got into with Andy Reid on the sideline last or the week before,
Yeah.
where you could see there was mutual respect, and it was a dad with his son.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you're not going in if you don't go get checked.
Right.
Go.
You might as well go to the locker room, or
Yeah.
you're not getting on the field.
Yeah. And Mahomes having enough respect for him to just not just run in, which would have happened other places that we know very well.
It's a coach that has control of his team. It's a coach that has a respect of his team. It's a coach that knows how to run a successful organization and knows how to rely on players when he needs them. I wouldn't say most, but there are a lot of coaches out there that wouldn't have handled that Mahomes situation in that way. They would have said, "Oh, you ready to go? Panic move. Okay, go in. If you think you can handle it." And he says, "No, I'm not. Henny can handle this.
Right.
We have Henny as our backup for a reason, for situations like this. He can handle this. Go get checked. Your health is more important than a football game. And if you're okay, you get to go back in."
And that's what I love about Andy Reid. He has all the intangibles, but he, even in the heat of battle,
In a playoff game.
he cares more about the well-being of his player, which is also his team.
Right.
I'm not taking that away. But he wanted to make sure, okay, we could win this game. I can win it with Chad Henning, which I think he probably would have anyways. But I'm going to need you the other two games.
We got the Super Bowl to worry about.
Right.
I'm not worried about this game. I'm worried about the Super Bowl, and we need you there for that. So go get healthy. He's going to rest that thing. I think he'll be a lot more mobile come the Super Bowl. He still won't be 100%.
No.
It's the tides have turned for quarterbacks. A couple years ago, we were still talking about Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and all this old guard being there, wonder when that shift was going to happen. It's happened.
It's happened.
Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes are the future of the NFL. Josh Allen is the future of the NFL. Burrow is the NFL. The shift is happening. And I do think Tom Brady makes one more run with the 49ers. Again, I think it makes too much sense at this point.
So that means now we have to talk about the thing that I'm just already tired of.
Which one?
Aaron Rodgers.
Do we have to?
Just briefly. All this talk. Yeah, I heard Adam Schefter talking about, well, I've heard rumors he may go. Schefter's just reporting rumors. He doesn't think he's going
Packers
anywhere.
want to move on is the big rumor he's talking about. Do I think that that's accurate? It probably is, because front offices are dumb. But you don't have a backup plan. It's not like Rodgers where it's like, we know what we see in this kid. It's time. This is, I truly believe, I mean, even though he will be the next Packer Hall of Fame quarterback, I do believe it's, well, we want to see what we have in Love. Well, if you want to see what you have in Love,
Should have done it last season.
what are we doing?
He
You should want to see what you have in the future of your team.
He doesn't have this, pardon my language, he doesn't have the stones to do it. And here's what's going to happen. I think he knows that Mark Murphy has 2 years left. Way too long in my mind, but he's got 2 years left. When he goes, Goody's gone.
He better be.
He better be. I mean, the new guy's going to bring in somebody new.
He just had his best draft. He got a lot of starters out of that draft already.
Whippy frickin' dingo.
I mean, you have to make a decision on Aaron Jones, which Aaron Jones is going to stay. You have to bring back Aaron Jones. You don't have a choice.
Well, you almost have to bring back Bakhtiari on a reduced deal, and I think Bakhtiari will accept that. The first mistake they've made, the biggest mistake they've made, is they didn't move on from Matt LaFleur.
100%. We've talked about that last week.
It's just, and Aaron Rodgers, everybody's saying, wow, he's a coach killer. No, Aaron Rodgers is actually seeing what's happening in the locker room. Matt LaFleur doesn't have control of the team.
Right.
When your kicker is making his own decisions going on the field, or when he's looking around going, oh, I guess we're going to punt.
Right.
That's a coach.
I don't understand how anybody can say he's a coach killer when he's had two coaches.
Well, he ran McCarthy off, but McCarthy's time had come.
McCarthy stopped holding players accountable. He was more interested in being a buddy. He didn't have that look in his eye that he does now with Dallas. The time had come. It happens to every coach. You have about 9 years, and it's time to move on.
And that's the problem with LaFleur. He's everybody's buddy. He wants nothing but his pals around him. He's got a bunch of yes men. I now go back to Jair Alexander, who I respect the hell out of because he has the stones to stand up and go, yeah, I have to do what my coach says. And you know he's going, yeah, it's stupid because I was playing a tight man-to-man on this, which, by the
Best corner
way,
in the league.
by the way, what did I point out to you when we were watching the Kansas City game?
Man to man.
Thank you very much.
You don't go away from man until you're forced to go away from man. Pin your ears back, get to the quarterback, stop the running, and if you have to change from man to zone at that point, then you do it. The best defensive coordinators in the league run that type of defense. I mean, especially with the Packers, when you have coaches out there like Leslie Frazier, who's defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, former Minnesota Vikings coach that understands the division, he's out there to pick up. You have Dan Quinn, who's staying in Dallas.
He could have been in Green Bay.
But he could have been in Green Bay. He definitely would have accepted that job. You have a coach out there like Lovie Smith, who would have been a great fit in Green Bay. You have, Kellen Moore out there. I wouldn't have had him as a head coach.
Wade Phillips.
He's at the XFL.
Fine. I would have taken a Wade Phillips in Green Bay because
the Sean McVay tree is showing time and time again that it's overrated. Because you have Mike Shanahan, who created that tree,
sure,
and then you have Sean McVay, and then everybody else underneath.
You have Kyle Shanahan, too, which is...
Kyle Shanahan's who I meant. Well, McVay came from the...
Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, they were coaches together. Sean McVay, anybody else under his tree is not necessarily the answer. And I think you have a lot of good coaches out there that don't have jobs that would be a really good fit for your team. And getting too comfortable with a coach that's blown playoff games for you 4 years in a row is a bad move.
Just didn't even get there this year.
Well, I include that in the 4 playoff games because by all accounts, it was a playoff game. It was win or go home.
Okay, I'll accept
that. It's an interesting decision to make. And there are people like that in life, so I get it. You know, we've all been there. Well, I don't want to make a change because this is just easier. That change may be better for me, but this is harder. It's the same concept. It's like going on a diet. Yeah, I could eat really good, but I really like cookies, and they make me feel good. And so I'm going to eat the cookies. Well, sometimes you just have to quit eating cookies and go on a diet and do what's good for you. And at this point, the Packers are sitting there with a coach in Matt LaFleur who's not a good coach, and they're just going to stick with him.
And you can look 90 miles away at what happens when you put a good coach in position. And speaking of Wisconsin, and not so much about Luke Fickell, but...
I thought you were talking about the Lions.
No, it's across the lake. It's a long way away.
I was wondering where your math was coming from, because I knew you weren't talking about Chicago.
No. In Madison. Greg Gard has lost 6 of 7 games. McIntosh has shown he's not afraid to pull the trigger. I can see another move coming along.
I mean, yeah, your basketball coach of Wisconsin is going to be fired. Ohio State's not. They're number 2 in the country. But,
Luke Fickell's gotten another 4-star recruit. Way to go, Wisconsin Badgers. You got to talk to me about this.
I don't have to talk to you. I see it. You send me the articles. We'll see what happens on the field. You're still not going to beat Ohio State. You haven't gotten a recruit out of Ohio.
Yet. He's still got to live with what he's got from there.
When you start getting recruits out of Michigan and Ohio the way that Ohio State does, we'll start talking.
It's going to happen.
Until then, you can stick with your corn-fed boys from Iowa, Minnesota. You can get your guys, your athletes from Chicago. We'll keep building from our big cities, and we'll keep winning. I mean, here's what you have to worry about with Luke Fickell, and this is the reality situation.
No, do not.
He's going to build a good program in Wisconsin.
Don't say it.
And then Ohio State's going to offer him the keys to the kingdom.
No, he's going to stay in Wisconsin. He likes it there. Please.
Until Ohio State comes calling. He was waiting for Ohio State to make the call and made the move when Ohio State wasn't making the call.
So.
Now we don't want to talk about this anymore.
No, I think
we don't want to talk about this anymore.
We're going to talk about
it is going to be a good season. The Big Ten has definitely made a lot of good moves. If you really want to get into college football here, the Big Ten's getting really, really strong before USC and UCLA come into play.
They have to.
This is going to be big time football now that they're in there once again. That's really going to compete with USC or the SEC. I'm sorry. When it comes to recruiting, when it comes to style of play, when it comes to pure athletes, because the Big Ten is starting to get a lot of pure athletes coming in that division, not only in Wisconsin, but in Nebraska. Minnesota's starting to make some moves. Illinois is starting to look a lot better and getting some big recruits from the area.
Ugh. Penn State always,
You have Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan that are going to stay the top dogs out there. Purdue's not going to be anything more than what it was last year. Indiana's not going to do anything. Michigan State has to prove that they can turn it around. Right. I mean, Wisconsin's getting more recruits than Michigan State at this point. I don't think Michigan State's going to be anything for a little while. But you do see that division that USC and UCLA are going to come into play, and that's going to be a lot more competitive than it has been the last few years.
It is, and then hopefully they'll step up and compete against the SEC, which is really what they have to do.
What is the SEC, though? Let's be real about this for a minute.
It's Alabama and it's Auburn.
It's not even Auburn. Auburn's been trash for years. People talk about the SEC like it's this godsend. You have one team that consistently makes it. Two now in Georgia. Now that Georgia's there again.
And LSU is going to be back there with Brian Kelly.
They could. They definitely could, but it's the most overrated conference ever. You have Alabama that is great and unbelievable. They're the greatest dynasty in college football in the history of college football.
And he's got the greatest coach in college football history. I'll give him that.
100 in college football, you have to have the coach in order to succeed. Like Alabama is the best, and Georgia with Kirby Smart is going to take over that throne and compete right there with them. But besides that, LSU's up and down. Florida hasn't been anything in a decade.
Correct.
Tennessee hasn't been anything since this past year they were, but before then it hasn't been since Peyton Manning. Kentucky's nothing. I mean, who else do you have?
Texas, Oklahoma going into the SEC.
Texas hasn't been anything since Mac Brown left.
Correct.
Oklahoma hasn't been anything since Bob Stoops left. Lincoln Riley's been in a couple of big games, but other than that, he hasn't been in anything. Again, overrated coach, in my opinion.
Who? Bob Stoops?
Lincoln Riley.
Oh, Lincoln Riley. Well, it's going to be interesting to see because I do think you're going to have two major conferences in the country. I still am predicting the NCAA will not be the governing body of football for much longer.
You have Big Ten, SEC, they'll break off, and then you'll have a Big 12, which will be the rest of the schools.
Right.
I mean, that's really what's going to happen. The ACC is the next to break up. The ACC was smart because they made their team sign this ridiculous contract, which was brilliant because, let me tell you, Clemson would have left at this point.
Miami would have
been gone. Like, there would have been a lot of teams that left if it wasn't for that big contract, so well done, ACC. But I do think there will be the first stone to fall. I think Clemson will be that first stone to fall with Miami at the same time. And I could really see a Clemson and Miami head over to the Big Ten.
I could see that happen as well. And then there's the one other giant stone that's got to fall, and that's Notre Dame. They're going to be forced into a conference whether they like it or not.
I think Notre Dame's going to make the mistake, and I think they're going to go into the SEC.
I think that would be the dumbest thing they could ever do. If they were going to do anything, they would wait and go in that Big 12 third conference where they could beat up on everybody else and be relevant all the time.
I mean, that's what they're doing now.
Exactly.
I mean, they're a good team.
Sure.
They're a really good team. I'm really tired of people saying you have to lower your academic standards to win. I mean, that shouldn't be the case.
I don't think that's the case. Ohio State's got high standards. Everybody in the Big Ten has high academic standards.
Right.
SEC.
Here's my biggest issue with the academic standards conversation, and this is going to go off of sports for a little bit for a second here, so ride with me along this journey, is if you're talking about lowering academic standards to get people into college, then what the hell is the point of college?
To win football games.
I guess. I mean, my understanding was that college was for higher education and becoming a smarter person because of the hard work you put in high school to get better jobs later on. Not to win football games.
Well, now it's to be indoctrinated.
Okay, I'm not going that far. I'm just saying that
you brought it up.
I didn't mean to go down your boomer way with this stuff. I just was saying when it comes to football, And plus, in the NFL, you want smart players. Like, you really do. And if you are having to allow somebody with a 1.2 GPA, I'm sorry, your limits are already a 2.2 GPA in a lot of these schools. It's not that hard to get a 2.2 GPA through high school. It's really not. It's not hard to get a 3.0 GPA in high school. I had higher than a 3.0 GPA, and I didn't really try that hard. Like, there are tutors out there. There are ways to you can take gym classes. You can take a bunch of other classes to boost that grade up quite a bit. Like, it's really not that hard. So if you're telling me, well, Notre Dame or Ohio State or Wisconsin or Alabama or any of these places, well, we need to lower our academic standards in order to win. No, you don't. You don't. I mean, if you have a guy that's out there that can't pull a 2.0 GPA to get into your school,
he should be at a JUCO anyways.
He's clearly too lazy to do what's good for him. And he clearly doesn't have the drive to be successful where he needs to be. Because if he really cared about playing college football and moving on his career and not just being a football star because he's a really good athlete playing against not really good athletes, then his GPA would be higher and he'd pay attention to school more.
So says the Kyle.
I mean, it drives me nuts. Like, no, these guys that want to actually succeed should just, succeed. It's not that hard to get a 2.0, which is the academic limit for most universities.
They need to step up and think of their future and actually put in a little work. You're right.
Well, that's why Notre Dame, if you have a degree from Notre Dame, that still means a lot.
It does.
Because you need a 3.2 minimum to get into that school. So it still means a lot. You have to be driven to go. I talked to a doctor that went to Notre Dame, and he said, I kind of wish I would have went to another school because there's no easy classes at Notre Dame. There was no off days. They were all hard.
Honestly, I want that for doctors.
I do too.
I don't want them to have easy days.
I do too. They need to go and get it. It drives me nuts that it's about football. It drives me nuts that the layman football fan says, well, we got to lower our academic standards to win.
No.
Then you don't understand what this is. Like, this isn't about football. This shouldn't be about football. This should be about people getting education. And I'm done. I'm done.
It should be. However, as well as I do, it's multi-billion-dollar business. And speaking about college, it's why I don't think NIL should be there. If you're a freshman, you should give them a stipend.
Dude, I've said that forever. Like, it should not be a recruiting tool. NIL should not be allowed to freshmen. It just doesn't work out that way. I mean, look what happened to the kid that went to Florida. They offered him a $15 million NIL to go to that school. And then guess what? They couldn't pay it. You're going to force kids to make bad decisions, and I just don't agree with it. But you can go back and see those rants. I have had plenty of them, but I think you and I have had an outstanding show. What do you think?
I do too.
That means it is time for the most terrifying part of my week. It's the last word.
So, as parents of kids that are now in their 30s, so parents in the late 80s and early 90s, we failed you guys so badly because that was at the heart of the participation trophy period.
Yeah, it's your fault.
No, because I was the parent who was telling each team what the score was and getting yelled at by the other parents. It doesn't matter what the score was. Yes, it does.
I mean, it's your generation's fault.
Kids need to know how to win with grace and lose with dignity. And those participation trophy people who think that's a good thing are freaking idiots. And they just need to go away and go back in their hole. Competition is good for people. And having kids compete is good for kids. They need to learn. They're going to be competing their whole life, and they need to know how to win and how to lose, because you learn more from losing than you do from winning every time. The second thing I'm going to kind of go off on, because I was reminded of an incident when you and your brother were a kid. I was asked about it because one of my coworkers' kid was getting bullied in school. And I told him the story about your younger brother who, when he was in first grade, was being picked on by a fourth grader. And the fourth grader grabbed his glasses and took it away from him. And before he knew what happened, Ryan had grabbed his head, put it into the wall, bloodied his nose, and broke his glasses. And of course, I got a call from the school. And my only questions were, did he start the fight? Well, no. I said, fine. He finished it. Kids never start fights, but if somebody else starts a fight, feel free to finish it. It's a good life lesson.
I had one situation with my son. I mean, obviously you and I parent in different generations for sure. But I did have one situation with my son where he was getting picked on at school, and he was complaining and asked me to go and speak with the teachers. And my first response was, well, what have you done about it? He's like, well, nothing. I said, well, why would I do something about it if you're not willing to do anything about it? This is your situation and your issue. And all of a sudden, he did something about it the next day, and it wasn't a problem anymore.
What did he do?
I don't.
Oh, sure.
I'm not getting into it. He handled the situation. It was words. He talked to the person, said no more. He just stood up for himself was really what it was. He said no more, didn't back down to anything, and it was over. And he came home very happy saying, Dad, I handled the situation. And I was very proud of him, but I do think that's a big situation now in parenting. I agree, where, my kid's toy broke, right? And I didn't just fix the toy. I was like, all right, well, guess let's throw it away. Well, I don't want you to throw it away. It was broken.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can fix it.
Oh.
And all of a sudden he fixed it. And I learned this from an older gentleman I saw on a YouTube short, actually, where it's, he's like, and then you say, and I did, oh, that's wonderful. How did you fix it? And you let him explain how you fix it. You let the kid learn on his own.
In
So
other
I
words,
agree in that sense.
You don't let people give you their monkey.
I
They'll
think
put a monkey on your back in a second.
they will. I do think parents tend to interfere a little bit too much at this point.
Look, the worst thing that's ever happened to Little League sports is parents. You don't need to be there. I'll never forget the day you were playing basketball and your mom and I were at the game. And you took a shot and you went back and you cracked your head on the floor. Your mom was ready to run out. And I said, no, sit here, let him handle it, let the coaches handle it. He's like, well, no.
I was out.
You were out. But at the same time, and you were out, but the coaches handled it.
Yeah.
The parents did not need to run on the court and interfere.
No.
And I've got a baseball story that would emphasize that, but I'm not going there on this one because it was
Fair
too
enough.
funny, but inappropriate too. But, just coaches are there to coach their kids. Helicopter parents are they're rotten people. Let the kids
Okay.
just go and play.
They're not rotten people. They're very caring parents that
They're
care a lot for their
over-caring.
kids
But
and
they're
don't want them to get hurt and
No,
don't
that's-
realize that they may be causing more damage than they realize.
they're trying to live out their fantasies through their kids.
That's not a
a lot of
helicopter parent. That's not what it
Sure it
means.
is. You're involved in your kids from
Helicopter
every
parent is
situation.
anytime a bad thing happens, you helicopter into the rescue.
yes. And that's why they're the coaches of the team, because they're going to make sure little Johnny gets to play all the time. No. Kids go to these camps to learn fundamentals. Most of the kids are never going to play professional sports, so they need to learn how to play and have fun and take their talent, let their talent take them as far as they can go. Worst thing that's happened to us is that the kids specialize in one sport. Let them play all.
Agreed.
They aren't rotten people. They're overprotected.
There you go.
They're way too involved. Let kids go to the park and play.
Right.
Make their own rules.
I struggle.
We're living in a different time.
No, here's the thing. It's true that I need to just let the kids play, but here's the issue. I like playing with kids. So
They need to play with kids their own
they
age.
pull me in and I want to play.
I
So
got
I'm
it.
like, yeah, I'm in, but you're right. They do need to play with kids their own age, but I only get them for so long, damn it.
I know, and I played with you guys. I'm not saying I was. I mean,
But you're right on that, Mike.
okay, I'm done. I won't talk about the price of gas, which went up again.
Yeah, thank God. Thank you so much for joining in every single week. We appreciate you watching. Leave us a comment below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it. This has been Sports Talk with Dan.
Bye, everybody.